Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Scott Garber back in the saddle of the Profluent Sports podcast, where we are highlighting founders, investors, executives across the sports business landscape. Today we have a really exciting conversation across the whole soccer landscape. There's a big spotlight on it now that Club World Cup has gone and we're looking at 26. And I'm excited to bring in the founder, CEO of Kickback Soccer Media, John Parker, to help us navigate what this space is going to look like between now, the World Cup, and then the long tail that we're going to leave behind it. John, my man, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Scott. Thanks so much for having me. So excited to talk soccer. I'm always excited to talk soccer. So
I was going to say,
it's industry 26, what's happening afterwards. It's why I started this company, because I want to do this for a living.
How cool, man. When we can mix passion and work, then it just becomes a lifestyle. And, American soccer, or football as the rest of the world refers to it, is truly a lifestyle, John. And so, I think, like, as we get this conversation started, it's so important to understand your origin story. How did you first find love for the game? And, sort of let's build that into what is now, an amalgamation of, Kickback and how you're expressing it in the business world.
Yeah, that's actually, it's so unique in soccer that we all have these origin stories that are different, frankly, in the US than they are anywhere else in the world. One of our media properties called First Touch, we actually do these testimonials with people in the industry who tell their origin story of how they got into the game in the US, because it's not a monolith here, right? If you grow up in the UK, you inherit your fandom. Your dad, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, they're Leeds United fans. Everything around you is imbued in the sport. But in the US, at least people my age, I am amazingly like a graybeard of the American soccer industry, having worked all 15 years of my career in the space. At least for people my age, we did not inherit it. I grew up in the Southeast. I grew up in college sports, college football, ended up going to an SEC school, Vanderbilt. So that obviously was really what was culturally part of the zeitgeist. It was what you experienced day to day. But I discovered the game, like many people my age, online. I was the first generation, call it age 11, 12, 13, who could get Fox Sports World or Setanta or one of these weird, $15 a month channels. Go literally pay your parents back $15 a month to be able to watch the Liverpool game on the weekend because you saw the 98 World Cup and now you're like, I got to have more of this. That was my access point. It was a video game called Championship Manager, which was pretty much an Excel spreadsheet on a CD-ROM that you play soccer management on a CD-ROM, combined with the 98 and 2002 World Cups, and just fell in love. And I ended up in, if there are any like deep sickos like me listening right now, there's a forum called Big Soccer back then. I was a 14-year-old on the forums. Started watching the games. Once I got to college, I got the MLS season pass, which you get, first time you could watch all the games. And I'd sit in my dorm room and watch every MLS game every weekend. And I have since then. Just something about it, the expansiveness, the size, the scale of the sport, the fact that you could literally every single day pull a new thread and find something else to love and fall in love with. And it never stops. Like you can never catch up in your entire life with the expanse of soccer. And that was just, it's always drawn me further and further in because of that.
It's so cool. And I mean, it's, before we sort of take a dive into, what you built, how you built it, and, sort of where you see it going. I mean, John, you mentioned you've been in the space for 15 years, right? And, soccer is this global phenom. But it feels like we're just starting to really catch our tailwinds in the US. Talk to us about some of the evolutions and changes you've seen, not just at the professional level, but what does that look like as we start to look at youth development, structure? What are some of the evolutions that stick out to you?
So first in the youth development side, and I'll call it the front offices, I had the fortune to work for the most visionary, prolific investor in MLS, a guy named Richie Graham. Worked out of his family office. He founded the Philadelphia Union Academy in high school. I used to literally work right beside the high school where Paxton Aronson, Brendan Aronson, Mark McKenzie, Evan Sullivan, Quinn Sullivan all came through that school, all funded from the vision of Richie Graham. And I got to see literally from the first building block, the best academy in North America get built. Philadelphia Union had 7 men's national team players, the Gold Cup. We've never seen anything like that. That academy did not exist a decade ago. When Richie hired me, I came over to the Union at the same time. A guy named Ernie Stewart came over, became the sporting director of US Soccer. The front office didn't exist. The president who kind of ran the business also decided who the players on the team were going to be. So that was just a decade ago. That was 2015. Now you have a man named Ernst Tanner who's running that front office, who was the best in Germany, He's the best in the US now. You have an academy that from under 8 to the first team is as professionalized as any you're going to see in the world, that are producing world-class players. They're transferring players every single year. And we just got there, right? Youth development has a very long tail. It takes 10, 15 years to really see the fruit of your labor. And we just are getting there with the professionalized, from sports science to the youth coaches to video analysis, from top to bottom. We finally have that in place. And what I don't think people fully understand, because you can if you're a layperson, how long that takes to build and then how long that takes to see the results of. It's
Sure.
not like, the NFL, you can make some changes to your drafting strategy, and in 3 years, you've got a top team. To build a good academy, it's going to take 15 years.
No, it's really cool to start to watch the resources that were put behind football and basketball. Now we're watching almost what we'll call the democratization of those resources, right? And the allocation of those resources, which, now it's, I think, widening the aperture of the talent pool and filling the top of the funnel, which now that we have real infrastructure to move them through, should yield a bigger product, better product when we show up on the global stage. We're going to come back to that, right? But I want to understand what Kickback Soccer Media is, right? Like, I think one of the phrases that stuck out is, by and for the people. What does that mean in the context of what you're building?
So we referenced before, I've got 15 years in the industry. And what I will say about that is, in those 15 years, I have seen the industry evolve, but we still very much are an emerging industry outside youth soccer. Let's set youth soccer aside, which is this behemoth. It's a massive multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yep.
But for everything else, we're very much an emerging market. The people in the industry are younger, right? I am, as I've referenced, a little bit of a gray beard, even at, around 40, 15 years in the industry, as someone who didn't necessarily play at a high level, but then spent their career in it. So to that end, we're just now getting to the point where we're able to tap into all these people who are super passionate about the sport and also have a little bit of professional experience. About 6 or 7 years ago, I helped Richie Graham, the guy I referenced before, found a company called For Soccer, which is a media and marketing agency. Guy's named Heath Pierce, former player, Mark Ryan, still there, industry professionals, leaders, etc. But at that point, a bunch of us were in our early 30s, and we realized you could not start a company like that 2 years before that. We just now have the intellectual capital and the experience within soccer to build businesses. So that, in a way, ended up being the genesis, along with this moment we have in 2026, for what Kickback Soccer Media has become. It's a vision for something we've never really had as a community, which is that American soccer media company that's in it for the long haul, that's there for the community members, but the fans and the talent. And talent, I don't just mean the voices, I mean the people who work in the industry. A place that you're not just vacillating between different companies who have the rights for this year and then they have the rights for next year, and someone's going to try out a podcast, but they're probably going to shut down after 6 months when they get bored of soccer. It's a group that really is built from the bottom up, that is differentiated in its connections, its relationship equity, and has a vision for 2026 that isn't just how do we make money up until 2026. Most importantly, is about how do we build something that can take the momentum we're getting from 2026 and build a platform for new, emerging, and avid fans to keep people in the sport and create an inclusive and exciting environment that ensures that the legacy of the World Cup is not just a bunch of people made a bunch of money then and they left. The legacy is 94, we went from you can watch it on TV to where we are now. We should be making those same leaps moving forward. And we need people who are invested in what comes after 26 for us to reach that goal.
And it's so cool, it's this moment in time. I think you referenced it was 104 Super Bowls, right? And that's what is it's going to crescendo in 26 here, in North America. Talk to us about the strategy, right? And I think, we'll use this as a time to introduce Soccerwise, Kickback Committee and First Touch. But what is the strategy? How do you leverage sort of the media arm of this to capture what that moment is, but also create that legacy long tail that lives on far beyond it? Just curious, sort of the strategy there.
So one thing we did from the launch, and this is part fortune, but we are a marriage of sorts between the entrepreneurs, producers, the creatives, all the people who build soccer in the back end. People who worked with me when I was general manager of Soccer Champions Tour for the past year, a group of 5, 6 of us. and the leading voices and personalities of American soccer. David Goss, Tom Bogert, Jordan Angeli. We added Susanna Fuller recently, who was the host of CBS Morning Footy. The marriage of those groups is what I think really differentiates us going into the next year, besides our vision of how to engage with audience. So what we're able to take to market in order to capitalize this opportunity is both the back of house as well as a talent ensemble, nearly a dozen at this point, that can speak to all facets of the game, which allows us to then build the media properties that we believe can capture the avid fans, ensure they're the evangelists for us, and then create a fan funnel, really, for all of those soccer curious fans, those emerging fans who frankly are going to ask people like me, how do I follow the World Cup in 2026? The stat we've been using is there are going to be 55 million new fans coming through the World Cup next year. I've also done enough studies where pretty much every data point shows that half of people who get into soccer in the US get into soccer because of the World Cup. So we know there is, with a domestic World Cup with 104 Super Bowls, there's going to be a massive flood of people interested in soccer. And the question is, who's communicating with them? How are they communicating with them? Are they creating something that's accessible and welcoming, content that's evergreen, that isn't necessarily judgmental about their new fandom or the fact that maybe they aren't as avid as other people? Are we able to get them into the game and then speak to them after the World Cup as well? So that's our goal. That's why we've got 3 different brands. Soccerwise, as mentioned, that's our avid fandom. So David, who is co-founder of mine, he was the longtime host of MLS's Extra Time podcast. Tom Bogert is the premier newsbreaker in soccer in the US. Jordan Angeli is the premier analyst for NWSL. And we provide that traditional coverage for soccer in the US that doesn't exist. Like really that vision of, we don't have ESPN for soccer. We don't have that coverage of NWSL and MLS that the other sports have, but there are all these diehard fans who want that coverage. And now we add our back of house capabilities, and we're able to let the talent thrive at what they do. So they're not thinking about, how do I go get a sponsorship? How do I edit this video? We let them speak to the audience while our back of house takes care of everything else. And then we introduce that committee property really with this idea of, we don't have the media platform to converse with the emerging fan. People love their marketing personas, so I'll just use my version. There are tons and tons of people in the US who will go to 3 MLS, NWSL, or USL games a year. Follow the men's national team, follow the women's national team when they're in a tournament. Maybe there's they'll watch a couple of Champions League games, but soccer's not their main thing. But soccer's so big now that there are plenty of people who follow it. They don't have a home. There isn't content right now. There aren't really communities that are speaking to them who kind of keep things lighthearted, focus on the topics and trends, and can make it. I love to reference Sicko's Committee. I don't know if anybody knows those.
Course.
Like, it's my college football reference. So I don't follow college football that closely. I follow Vanderbilt, my alma mater, but I love what Sicko's Committee does. I will consume anything they do. They can talk about Iowa punting, and I'm not watching a single Iowa game every year, but I'll follow what Sicko's Committee is doing.
John, appreciate the punter reference. I was one in college, so you speak to my heart there.
Yeah. So that's that type of content is something that we've been missing. And give it a full ensemble cast. We're incubating new shows there. So last week we had Heath Pierce guest. We had 4 different other hosts, 4 other different participants. This week we'll rotate that cast. And every week we'll have from our dozen or more members of our crew, plus our many friends in the industry. We'll rotate based on the theme of the week. And we'll incubate new segments. We'll incubate new partnerships. And hopefully that helps kind of fill out our entire media ecosystem as well, being a little bit more talent agnostic, and then really seeing what the audience engages with, really conversing with the audience, and then building from there versus prescribing a product to audience and talking at them. We want to talk with them.
It's so great, man. It's so great. And you know, what's really cool is I'm listening to you, like, you know, on the Profluent side, we built with 3 core pillars, which were education, access, and support, right? And we saw that across, you know, the sports business landscape. But as you drill down into each individual sport, I think it sort of starts with those foundational pillars, right? And then how do you mix and match, you know, depending on your entry point into the sport? You know, if I'm a novice, how do I learn? How do I get access to the fandom? And then where do we go to support all of this, right? And sort of watch sort of those 3 move in unison. You just alluded to it, but I'm curious. You have such a deep and diverse roster,
Yeah.
right? Do you sort of listen to the fans and then curate the segments based on what they say, or are you dictating and driving based on your industry knowledge? How do you come up with that formula that's well received?
It's a conversation. I
Yeah.
think that is core to everything. When we say we're for fans by fans, we really mean it. So in Austin, I've been talking. I founded an American Outlaws chapter back in 2010, the Atlanta chapter. If people don't know it, American Outlaws is the U.S. national team supporter group. They're the main one. They have been since about 2010, 2011. I founded the Atlanta chapter when I was first starting. I've been very involved at the supporter group level, and a lot of us have been involved at the supporter group level on the playing side. We all come from different parts of the game and bring that experience. So when we get our 12, 15 people in on a conversation, we can bring every perspective, but then we have to have a conversation with people. And luckily, we're connected with all the podcasters, the supporter groups, the front office executives. We are in the fabric of the community, so we can get that feedback directly from our colleagues, our friends. And on top of it, we're conversing with the audience. So we did a partnership with Bluesky that's really about how do we bring kind of that 2014 Twitter back to the American soccer community, when really American soccer had a much more positive community, much more positive conversation happening. That conversation can be live. We can have that conversation on Bluesky every day about, hey, this is something we're interested in. What are you interested in? We see what people engage with. Like I just used an example. We were talking today. We did a pretty basic remember a guy on Friday on Bluesky, and it had just blew it out of the water. Something you haven't seen since Twitter in its heyday. We asked people for their soccer musicals. Someone wrote a 2-page treatment on a soccer musical from the NWSL Washington Spirit Gotham FC match from 2024 on a whim. Like that conversation, like, okay, people are very interested in this. People are dying for someone to actually talk with them versus preach to them or tell them about all the ways that American soccer is inferior or how all the things that are happening right now are making them angry. Like people who are in the community, they're fans. They love it. If you engage with them in a way that matches them level, they're going to converse with you, and you can take that back and see what works and then produce something that engages the audience.
John, I think that this applies specifically to what you're talking about. If we extrapolate for anybody listening, this is just a core fundamental of building through your community, building with your community. And so often we've been taught to build, to dictate what the community is going to absorb. And so I just think this is a blueprint of where business is moving, and sports is always a great testing ground for that. So it's really neat to watch that. And I think this next point sort of like drives it even further. So talk about this 3% pledge in perpetuity for these fan supported initiatives, right? So now we're not only listening to you, but we're also putting our money where our mouth is to start to like put the shoulder to the plow. Talk to us about the origin and what that's done for the business.
So I'm going to shout out Free Beer Movement. Maybe a few of your listeners will remember this. It was core to the American Outlaws supporter group. I actually was chatting with the founder of it last week, Dan Wurzima. I've seen the power of investing in community. Soccer specifically, because the history of supporter groups really has community at the core more than any other sport outside maybe college football on campus. That community really drives the sport forward. Investing in that community brings back amazing returns. And it's really about that inclusivity and accessibility that helps us grow that community. So taking Free Beer Movement really as our influence. And Free Beer Movement was in 2010, 2011, Dan pushed this concept of, hey, we're all trying to grow the game in the US. Go take a friend who is not a fan of the game right now, buy them a beer, either at a bar or a game, and have them hang out with you and watch a game. Don't judge them. Don't be over-explanatory. Just bring them into the environment and see if it latches. And really in Advance of 26, that's an ethos we really, really believe in. We're going to have so many people interested in the game, and anyone who's in the community wants to see a positive future for it. It's on us. We are beholden to grow the community in a positive way over the next year and a half. And we want to do that in a way. There's so many great programs out there at the youth soccer front. There's so many people who do great work. First Touch clinics, we're using that brand, First Touch, free programs, free leagues. There are a lot of people who are embedded in it who can deliver there. But what there's not enough of is support of the supporter groups, support of growing the game at a fan level that frankly is going to finance the future of the sport. We need the fans. We need the people to come in who are going to stay in the game, spend in the game, raise their kids in the game. So we need to ensure in 26, we're doing exactly what Free Beer was doing. Taking a friend to a local USL game, making sure they have a great time. Taking them to a bar, watching a World Cup game with them, having a great time, helping explain the game a little bit, but not judging them because they're not diehard fans like the rest of us. So that 3%, we're looking, and this is a gross number. We're all so much a part of the fabric of the community within the organization. We would have done something like it anyways. So we wanted to plant a flag of whether it's supporter group initiatives, clubs that are doing some free ticket programs. I've been talking to American Outlaws about one. How can we bring people into the game over the next year and in perpetuity? We want to support that because we think there's a deficit there in terms of people investing in fandom and ensuring our community becomes a more positive community and a bigger community.
Ooh, I love that, right? And, I always think it's neat when you're able to watch this all converge. And at the end of the day, John, I'm listening to you, and the passion that you're speaking with comes from being a fan first, I believe, and then moving this into business, right? And so it's always neat. We talk about it like, to go build in sports. It brings a unique perspective when you were an athlete or a coach and then go back into the business side. So it's really neat to feel that passion come through the screen. When you talk about the fandom side of it. Now, I think what's interesting is, you've talked about sort of this identity, right, of what American soccer looks like. We don't necessarily want to copy the European side. How do you define American soccer culture? And then second piece to the question is, like, as you start to, put your fingerprint and shape it, what do you want it to be?
So I think the answer to that question is rooted in the fact that in its heterodoxy, in how heterogeneous soccer in the US is, and that's why it's so great. Because we've all come to the game in different ways, because we all have such unique backgrounds, and we access the sport so differently, we provide a different perspective on the sport than anywhere else in the world. I will throw a shout out for, I forget who had this data point, but the data shows that American soccer fans actually are more knowledgeable about the sport than people in other countries. Especially the countries where they're rooted, because frankly, we have a little bit of an inferiority complex. So we all probably dive in a little bit deeper in order to ensure that we understand the sport and can, hold our own. But to that end, whether it's, second, third generation families from other countries, whether it's people like me who come at it a little bit more digital side and diehard fandom, a lot of people in the country mainly play it and they don't consume it as much. We have a community of subcommunities, to quote a person I used to work with, Bert Cherry, that really comprise our community as a whole, the American soccer community. And it's understanding that and looking to connect with people where they natively are versus trying to move them to where you are that is going to allow us to continue to create that diverse and robust community without trying to force something that frankly is just never going to be accepted. Maybe in 100 years after our grandkids and their kids have been raised in the sport, it'll be different. But right now, we all have those unique journeys. We all have our own stories of how we got here that are going to be different than every other story. And that's what makes it so great, makes it so different, that versus being raised in Atlanta and growing up with the Braves. Which that fandom's fantastic too, but your neighbor's a Braves fan, their neighbor's a Braves fan, and that's what it is.
I think it's really cool as I listen to you. It sort of goes back. You hear some of these early American dream stories, and it's like it was this melting pot. And I think this is a really unique way in modern society to go ahead and relive that melting pot and reinvigorate it and celebrate the uniqueness, but have this binding agent that not only pulls us together here domestically, but it makes us relevant in the rest of the world, right? And I think that, John, speak to it. I'm sure it's a little bit outside of Kickback, but like when you travel, what does this community look like? When you go to new places and you lean in, my father played international rugby, and you dropped in New Zealand, and all of a sudden you have fans and friends that you never even knew existed because of this binding agent. What's been some of the personal experiences that the game's brought you?
So I'll come to one quickly after I make a point around one of the conversations outside the sport that I've been having a lot over the past couple of months is about community writ large and the digital era, in an era where, frankly, there's a lot of conversation about how we've become increasingly isolated. A lot of people talk about third places and how we don't have third places anymore, but sport has thrived in the digital era. Soccer, as I just mentioned, my fandom is rooted in the digital era, and I found community through something I accessed digitally. So I think it's more beholden than ever for us to really lift up sport as a positive community environment, because it is almost our last refuge of greater community aggregation. There's a great New York Times op-ed. I apologize, I forget his name, about a month ago, about this specific point of how we really have to invest in the communities that we create in sport, because it's our last vestige. It's the one last place that really everybody can come together. And soccer is a perfect example of this. First thing I would say is I can be in a cab in any country in the world and have a conversation the entire ride. Like, I know a player from that country, I can have a cab driver from any country, and we can have a great time for at least 20 minutes talking about soccer. You always have a connective point with anyone in the world with soccer. It's someone from their country, someone from your country, a team they love, a team you love. And there's something communal about it where, especially since I'm not from Madrid or Barcelona and part of the Madrid El Clasico, as long as you're not in one of those derbies, there's a friendship, a camaraderie that develops just naturally on the spot. And one of the things I loved about American soccer being at kind of the front end is, for the past 15 years, I worked with the Philadelphia Union. They're my team. If I see someone in a New York Red Bulls jersey, their rival, they're a friend of mine. They aren't an enemy, they're a friend. And that community can be so strong because pretty much anywhere I immediately find, doesn't matter how different they are from me, I can find a point of relationship and we can spend time to develop camaraderie just out of a shared love.
Yeah, it's so good. And I think that you hit on so many great points there, but it is the last frontier, right? It's what keeps us human. Mm-hmm. And I got the chance to go to the Man City Juventus game in Orlando, and you hear about it, and then you get to experience the fandom of soccer, even when it's here in the U.S. And it's
put on that match.
Huh?
I put on that match.
Well, see, look at that. Like, I mean, it's just crazy. And it's, I've been to some of the most incredible football games and hockey games. There's something different when you watch the whole world rally behind this. And I've always said, baseball, football, basketball, we call ourselves the world champions, but there's few sports that are truly global, and soccer is one of them. So, John, as we turn the corner and bring this thing home, I'm going to put you on the spot, but, what's your boldest prediction for U.S. soccer as we roll into, the World Cup and then sort of, years after, next 5 years? What's got you most excited? Big, bold prediction there.
So I've been asking people to give me their one-word summary of what they think World Cup 2026 could be. It needs to be transformative. That needs to be the word that we look back at it in 2031 saying that was transformative. Ideally, in 2031, we also have a Women's World Cup here, which should also be transformative. And we should be rolling from 26 into a well-timed Women's World Cup in 27, into a 28 Olympics here, into a 2031 domestic World Cup on the women's side. And this should be 5 years of us putting the nail in that soccer is one of the top 2 sports in the U.S. That needs to be the legacy here. We've already seen a lot of data that 21 and under, it's already the second biggest sport. So maybe just naturally via, aging and time, it's going to become top 2 sport. But I believe deeply in the power of soccer because of its communal aspect to be a positive force. And I think our country will be more connected to the rest of the world. We'll be better off if soccer is a part of our fabric of our culture. And I think next 5 years, we need to make this the sport, the second sport. NFL is such a behemoth. I know it's almost impossible to take down. But outside of the NFL, it needs to be a part of the fabric. It needs to be something that we can all share as a community.
Transformative is the word, I think, in sports across the board. This is just an opportunity to actualize it and be a part of it. And I think it sort of ties everything together, John. What an incredible conversation, man. I feel like I could sit here and talk to you. You're a wealth of knowledge. We're grateful for folks like you and your team leading the charge, creating these platforms, building communities. John, if our listeners want to learn more about Kickback or any of the other properties, best way to find you guys and engage and get involved.
So we are very excited about our partnership with Bluesky. So I'd first push everyone. We're actually the first partner of Bluesky, sports marketing, anything of the like. So join us on Bluesky. The American soccer conversation is happening there. We're at Kickback Soccer. We're at Kickback Committee. We're at Soccerwise. Come join the conversation there. Otherwise, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram as well, but we want to engage with people on Bluesky. We want to hear your perspective on the sport. We want to have a conversation. So I would ask you to join us there.
Love it. Get off the sideline. Go get involved. We got a big run coming up. And John, thanks again for taking time with us today and excited to follow the journey.
Thanks so much, Scott. Really appreciate it.
See you guys.